Hey everybody, Chris here. Today's episode is a board meeting, but we did have a special guest sit in with us, Dru Mack, who just yesterday climbed his hardest route to date with pure imagination in the Red River Gorge. So big congrats, Dru. So proud of you. We're going to split this up into 5 episodes that will release throughout the week, because this ended up being a 2.5-hour, really fun conversation with Dru. And if your name happens to be Ty or Brennan and you were in Lander this summer, there might be a little special Easter egg shout out at the end of the podcast for you. Let's get into it.
Maybe don't know.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Chris Hampton.
I'm Nate Drolet.
And I'm Dru Mack.
And together we formed the Three Musketeers, because that was the first trio of things I could think of, because I wasn't prepared for this
Migos.
one. Migos.
Three
Is Migos a
Migos.
trio?
3 Migos.
Oh, 3 amigos. Amigos, Dru, not Migos.
Walk it
Migos
like
is
I
something
talked it.
different, and I don't even know what Migos is, because I'm too old school for that.
I just know I'm supposed to hate it.
And I do. Never heard it, but I hate it. What is Migos? You know, tell me.
Yeah, it's a rap group from Atlanta.
How many people?
3.
Oh, well,
Ooh.
shit. You should have just went with it.
That's exactly why I said it.
You did not.
Confidence.
It's exactly why I said it.
Did you say Migos or Amigos?
No, I said Migos.
So you didn't say Amigos.
No, because there's a rap reference. I figured you would get it.
Have you ever heard of
O-dub?
3 Amigos?
Yes,
Okay, so you do know that reference too?
of course. That's what the Migos took their name from, I
Dru
assume.
is worse at references than Nate is.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I'm sure everybody got that.
I'm sure.
That's a millennial.
Are you saying only millennials listen to my podcast? Because I know there's a lot of old people
No, I'm
listening
saying
to my
only
podcast right now.
millennials listen to Migos. Ignore that.
Maybe I'll see if Migos will put this on their next album.
We'll just pass.
The 3 Migos.
We're not
Migos?
talking.
All right. That's enough.
I think we're doing a podcast.
We're in podcast number 2 here with Dru Mack, our special guest for this board meeting. You might be. Have we had another special guest on a board meeting, like with the two of us?
Edwin.
But he was just with me.
I
He
know.
took your
I was,
place.
I was a little sad that was still called a board meeting.
Yeah, it was a guest board meeting.
It was. No, other than the 2 coaches, 2 other guys, Paul and Blake.
Yeah. We
I don't
haven't-
think
you-
so.
You
I
might
think
be our
it's-
first outside guest at a full board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You don't have to be so proper, Dru. Board meetings are a little off the cuff. They're not so.
It's the reason we get the explicit rating.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly me.
So we're actually talking today about a topic that Dru knows quite a bit about, and the 3 of us sat here coming up with our top 5 most common, and we argued quite a bit about the order that these 5 were going to be in. So I don't even know if they are in order. Nate might think they're in order. I think they're in a whack order. I don't know what Dru thinks. But we're going to be talking about the 5 most common red pointing pitfalls. And
Why'd you say this is something I know really well, though?
you're a red pointer.
Yeah,
You're good at this, dude. You're really good at this. I don't know if you know the pitfalls, though, because you're really good at this. Except for there was that Omaha Beach incident.
Whoops.
Yeah, so maybe you do know some of the pitfalls.
Definitely do.
Nate, when I said this, you said, "Can we make that a pun?" Did you come up with a pun?
Redpoint Pitfalls? No, I haven't yet. I was even trying to think of it as you were saying it there.
Yeah.
There was something there. I feel like this is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, you can't say red pointing and falls without feeling like there should be a pun. So if any of you guys know a pun, hit us up on the Instagrams.
Yeah. Or good
Or the
dad
Facebook.
jokes. both are accepted.
Tell us a dad joke. You know good dad jokes. I can't believe you're blanking.
I used to work at a calendar factory, but they let me go when I took too many days off. Yeah. You know how to tell when a joke is becoming a dad joke?
No.
It's whenever the punchline is apparent. And the worst thing about this too is I've got a couple of friends who make fun of me for loving dad jokes. And I guess that makes me a faux pas.
Oh my God. It never ends.
Awful. So awful.
Yeah. You want to hear a joke about
That's
pizza?
your biggest pitfall.
Are you going to tell those sometime though, Drew?
Probably will. I'm writing them down now.
Good.
What's your pizza joke, bro?
Never mind. It probably would have been too cheesy for you anyways.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I'm done with these.
Classic.
Done with these.
Now that everyone's groaned for the
Yeah.
last 30 straight seconds.
Yeah. All right. So, Nate, why don't you tell us what number 5 is in our top 5 list of Redpoint pitfalls?
So, common Redpoint pitfalls. Number 1 is timing your red points incorrectly. So, this is either starting to try and send a route too early or waiting way too long to try and send a rock climb.
Which happens to you most often, Drew?
I think it bounces back and forth. But I think a lot more times I don't think I'm ready to send her out, and I end up kind of taking a little bit more time sussing out the moves and making good links instead of sometimes you just got to rip it and just give it a whirl and see where you're at. And then you can make better judgments of, am I ready to red point, or do I need to kind of spend a little bit more time on this?
Yeah, I think that's a really important way to gauge it that a lot of people are missing. Like the minute they make that first rip it attempt, try to do it, then the next attempt is try to do it, the next attempt is try to do it, and they just stay stuck in that zone instead of reassessing via that first attempt and realizing, oh, maybe I'm a little too soon
Of course.
with this. Your thoughts on it, Nate?
Yeah, no, I do. I tend to have the same issue of it's really easy to keep pushing it off till later because you can keep sussing things out, getting better beta, taking your time. It's very
Making
comfortable.
the moves easier.
Yeah, and it's one of those things to where you can make it to where you're never uncomfortable by doing that. Like you're never having to make really that hard of links. Like everything's kind of guaranteed until one day you're like, well, it's like, oh, I sent it on my first red point go kind of thing. Like, well, that was 80 goes later.
I say this about Annalisa all the time, actually, that
She
just needs to try harder. She just flipped me off. You can't flip me off. We're married now. Married people don't do that.
She's never flicked me off.
She likes you way better than she likes me, dude. Trust me. But I feel like there are a lot of times where she'll keep sussing it out until there's no chance of her falling.
Yes.
Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I have good friends like that too.
Yeah.
And it's an easy trap to fall into.
It totally is.
I feel like especially when I'm first starting a season off, or if I haven't sport climbed in a while, that's my go-to. I feel like for me, it's very much a sign that I am confident and in the mode of when I'm willing to give something a rip, when I'm not 100% confident, when I'm okay, I've got enough pieces, let's just pull on and give it hell and see what happens. Mm-hmm. For me, that takes I can tell I'm in a savvy level of red point mode, and being in sport climbing mode when I can do that and pull it off.
Do you think there are times where, or is there a limit to the number of times that you will say, let's see what happens?
I live my life by those words.
Because red pointing is sort of about knowing what's going to happen, right?
Yes. I think it's a happy medium. I really like the idea of checking in every now and then of let's say if it is a fairly long-term project, it's very easy to get stuck in that process of I'm just going to bolt up it a few times today, maybe do a few links, and it's a set deal. But I think every now and then it's good to be okay, I'm just going to give it a rip, see what happens, and go from there. Because that's when you also start to realize oh, I can't do that move that powerfully on point that way, or that clip's not going to happen like that.
Exactly.
So it kind of lets you check back in to see what's happening.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about that when we were kind of prepping beforehand, Drew, about
Yeah.
things changing on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, like going bolt to bolt is significantly different than, when you're pumped coming from the ground. And when you're pumped, like you might, another sequence might be easier, or a clip might be easier from, say, a higher hold, or you may need to skip a clip or things like that. Things change when you're pumped. And so if you're just continually going bolt to bolt or making small links, then, you're not really learning as much as you could.
Yeah, totally. And I think the idea of that you started this off with, Drew, of letting it rip and then asking, was it time or not,
Yeah.
is really, really important. And I think people learn that, what you just talked about, by letting it rip. I see a lot of people who, especially when they first come to the red or a place that's really, sustained, not terribly hard climbing, they'll come to those areas, go up something bolt to bolt, and then just be like, oh, well, I'm sending that next go. No
I did all the
problem,
moves easily.
Yeah.
And then they find that by the time they get to the fifth bolt on their redpoint attempt, that they weren't nearly ready yet,
Yeah.
and then a lot of people fall into the trap of just banging their head against the wall and advancing it 2 moves at a time over the next 8 months. So
That's a big pitfall.
Yeah.
For sure.
I guess let's talk about like why is it that we're trying to avoid this? Like why is it a bad thing to wait a long time? Because like, hell, if I can just guarantee it, what's wrong with that? Or, what's wrong with trying to red point early?
Well, some of those, if I'm not careful, I'm going to jump into our number 2 here, so I'm not going to do that. But I think that jumping in too early, you don't learn the skills of sussing out beta, trying new beta. You don't learn the skills of breaking a route down into its pieces. And those are things you're going to need to know when you get into harder and harder grades. So you might as well learn the skills that are required of these sins of where you're at the moment so that you can apply them later on. The danger of going too late is that you never have to try really, really hard, and part of the fun and the excitement and the draw of rock climbing for me is that moment when you're going really hard, you're in the red, and you're just latching holds and continuing to move.
Yeah.
When you thought you were going to fall 5 or 6 moves ago,
That fight, that like deeper dig is something that like you miss if you're just like making everything easier. And that like dig is what like really, I think, takes you further as well.
Totally.
And I think the reason you need that dig is because if you ever want to climb your absolute hardest potential, that's going to be a combination of doing everything perfectly, having all the right tactics leading up to it, and then being able to dig as deep as you can on the hardest moves you can do. So it's a component you have to climb your hardest.
Totally. I completely agree. Only thing I would add to it as well is just a time factor.
Yeah,
if you can get something done in 5 days versus 15, like
Efficiency.
yeah, you can do 3 rock climbs instead of just the one.
Yep.
So I think that's really important.
And especially early on, that's really important to your climbing. There are times when just miring into a long-term project is a good idea, but particularly early on in your climbing, that's probably not a great idea. So.
No, totally. So are there any big things that people should keep in mind with this? Either like red flags to avoid, like what are some telltale signs for I'm going in too early, too late, or what are some good like rules of thumb?
I think number 1 is have an expectation for, maybe not an expectation, have an intention for that attempt. And if you were way off the mark, like when you decide to start red pointing, if you think, oh, this is what I'm going to do, this is my intention, and then you just go ahead and send instead of, I think I'm going to fall around the fifth bolt, or you think you're going to send, but you fall around the fifth bolt, so your intention is way off, you had no idea what was going to happen, then there are probably some issues with the way you see your red pointing. So you should take a step back and look at it a little differently.
Totally. And you got to be honest with yourself with that too.
Yeah.
Like, you can only have so many foot slips, or I just bumbled one thing, but otherwise I would have made it 6 bolts higher kind of thing. You need to be honest with yourself with how things are really going. Drew, are there any like red flags you can think of when either that you can see in yourself from the past or that you've seen out at the crag when maybe people are trying to pull the trigger a little too early?
Yeah, I'd say that kind of comes into that intentions thing where, I've seen people who, pretty confident, and it happens in the red a lot, where you go bolt to bolt, you feel comfortable, you haven't really sussed, like how things are going to feel or really built the fitness, to do things. And you fall low, and I think that's also, like that can be hard mentally to like have kind of this thought in your head of this is how this is going to go, and then it happens drastically different, and that can be really frustrating to even follow through on a route like that.
Yeah, I see a lot of people bail in that situation.
Yeah, it's super frustrating if you have some kind of expectation or intention and you're far off from that, and so just keeping the expectations where they should be. And
I think if that happens, that's a good time to readjust and say, okay,
yeah, exactly.
I didn't quite know what I was getting into here.
Yeah.
Let me readjust so I can come up with better goals in the future.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what are some good examples of good intentions?
I think we've talked about this before, but I would set like little mini goals for each attempt on the route. And when you're ready to red point, make that the intention. Don't give yourself, this is totally not answering your question. It's sort of answering it backwards, coming through the other side, but don't give yourself the out when something goes wrong, where you start the intention or the attempt with, I'm just going to see what happens. If it's a red point attempt, then your attention is to red point. And if you fall really low or nowhere close to the red point on a pumpy route, then you need to readjust. And I think that's a really common problem, just letting yourself off the hook.
Totally.
You mentioned that with being honest with yourself.
For
as well.
sure.
I don't even remember what your original question was. I was just talking there.
It was like, what are good intentions? Like, for instance, when I'm in redpoint mode on something, my intention, and I voice this to my belayer so that I have someone to keep me honest. Like the thing I pretty much say every time before I pull off the ground is, I'm going to give it hell, and if I fall, I'm going to fall going for it.
Yep.
And for me, it's like, even if I don't red point, it's like, okay, did I do that? Because if I do that and I give it everything I have and I fall going for it, then it's like, cool chances, my chances of red pointing have just gone through the roof.
Right.
And that's for me personally, because it's just the things I need to work on.
In fact is, if you blow that, if you don't fall going up, then you just weren't ready for red pointing to begin with. If you give yourself a reason to say take or to just drop off without trying, then you weren't ready to red point. So
yeah, I always try to just handle the things that I can personally handle.
Totally.
So that there's only to me my mantra that I say as a belayer and I say to myself is try hard and have fun. And whether you're about to red point something or you're totally gonna just be nowhere near doing it, if you control the things that you can control, then that's gonna help you become a better rock climber.
Totally.
Yep.
Do you think red pointing is really fun though?
I think it's really fun.
Like type 2 or type 1? Is it
clipping
fun?
chains
I don't know
is
what the
great.
types are. But
Type 1 is you're having fun in the moment. Type 2 is it's fun afterwards in memory. Like to me, red pointing is like,
It's definitely more fun afterwards.
It's a deeper
Yeah, for me.
conversation.
I think
And
of it-
not just after the red point, but after you come down off the route. Because on the route, it's really easy to get frustrated during a red point attempt.
yeah, it's
But,
like nerve
but when you come down and can talk about all the little minutia of what you learned and what you still need to do and how you need to build yourself to get to that point, that's really fun for me.
for sure.
For me, like hard red points are like I'm too focused to be like fully enjoying the moment.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Totally. Like there was an
I'm
interview.
just like I have to try really hard.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can't think about how amazing this move is.
Right. Right.
Yeah, there was an interview with Jonathan Segrist on the Everything Climbing podcast, I think. And in it, he talked about he was just like, yeah, one of my favorite things when I go
All things climbing?
yeah,
Everything climbing. One of those.
one of those.
I haven't listened yet, but I will someday.
Well, there's two-part with Segrist, and in it, he talks about one of his favorite things with sport climbing is having a bunch of his friends at the crag. And his reason for it is he's just like, man, when I think sport climbing, like hard red pointing, he's like, fun is not the first word that comes to mind. Like it is hard, it's stressful. Like, and I think it's like anyone who's competed at a high level or even just competed in something that meant a lot to them, like knows, like, you know, you build up a lot of nerves. Like I remember racing when I was younger. It's like, racing wasn't fun. Like I loved training. I loved like hanging out with my friends and I loved like the idea of racing. But like in that moment, like I had a lot of nerves and it was like, you know, everything else was going through my mind, but like, man, isn't this a fun time? Like, and for me, like the hardest red points are like in that same kind of groove. It's like, I love the process. Like I love, especially getting to work on something hard with someone else. But in that small moment, like it's hard. It's nerve wracking. Like,
Yeah. I think I've reframed it over the years. And not just with red pointing, but with, I mean, lots of things in my life starting way before climbing. I've kind of reframed challenges as fun. And I think that has extended into whether it's difficult on sites or hard red points or whatever. That's really fun for me, like testing myself against an intention.
yeah.
So
You know, it's funny.
maybe that's why I came up with fun.
Yeah. No, it's funny you say that because I think about like, it's interesting because to me, like hard on sites, like that is the most fun I ever have rock climbing. Like just pull on, grip it and rip it, like give 100% confident and go and like fall trying hard. Like
Yeah.
there is nothing more fun to me in rock climbing than trying for a hard on site. So it's funny. Like, I don't know why. Maybe it's just an expectation thing.
I don't know. I saw you on that almost boltless slab in Vitavu, and it looked like you were having a lot of fun.
I was so off route. I was okay.
So not fun.
Yeah, Drew, you weren't there. I like,
Ew.
I'm like hollering to Chris. I'm like, Chris, does it go right or up? I don't know. Like, there's no chalk, and I'm lost. And he's like, you just go kind of up. It went right.
That's not fun
Didn't
to me.
go right.
I'm on like these ball bearings, like 30 feet run out over, I don't know, a pretty bomber point or number 3 or whatever. It would have held, obviously.
You onside it, so it was fun.
Yeah, I'm really glad I onside that 5.6.
I'm trying to romp up 5.6. That's my fun.
Dude, it was-
my fun zone.
It was not fun. I was in the danger zone.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a really common one, actually.
Totally. Like pulling the trigger too early or waiting so long that you're always comfortable.
Yep. So be careful about it. Be honest with yourself
Yeah. So
about
Chris,
how it's actually going.
what is our number 4?
Well,
Whoa, sorry.
our
Wha-
collective number 4.
What is my number 4 that you so graciously allowed?
Please stop fighting, guys.
I just dropped it. Sorry, Drew. You're all going to have to wait until tomorrow for number 4. In the meantime, you can find Drew on the Instagrams at Dru Mack 5. You can find Nate on the Instagrams at Crux Padwell. You can find me at Power Company Climbing on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and the Pinterests, or at www, nobody uses that anymore, powercompanyclimbing.com. You could search for us all day on the Twitters. You're not going to find any of us because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time, this time to build, this time to build, this time to build, this time. Power, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time. This time to build power. 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 This time to build. 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 This time.
Are you not?
Can I eat this?
Yeah.
Put the mic down here.
Yeah. You can eat it with the mic up there.
Oh, I can?
Yeah. You're Dru Mack. Some people want to hear you chew.
No, nobody does.
You're famous, dude.
You know what's great is actually
I'm gonna sell these sound bites of Drew chewing on eBay.
I was at the crag the other day. I was on at the rodeo wave, and these two guys that climb at the red were just like, "Oh man,
Ty and
Brennan."
Brennan.
Yeah.
Shout out Ty and Brennan.
Shout out to Ty and Brennan.
Ty won the Dino comp.
Yeah.
Brennan is swole.
Yes. Very.
So swole.
Yeah. Ty saved the day. I set that final dyno, and I was like, "Oh God, I hope someone can do this." Crushed it. So we're there, and I think it was Ty who was saying that he was like, "Oh yeah, I met Dru Mack, but I had to pretend like I didn't know him because like I can't just be like, oh well, you're Dru Mack." So I had to like pretend like I was meeting someone I didn't know. So it was pretty funny.
Good job, Ty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drew needed that. His ego was getting giant sized.
Yeah. Shout outs Ty. Young dude climbing really hard in scary trad routes.
Yeah, those kids are strong, man.
Proper rad.
And they're stoked. So this is going to go at the end of the podcast as a little Easter egg at the very end. So you'll have to tell them all to listen, Drew.
Check it out.
All right, we ready?
Yep.